we're looking at Biat HaMikdash. Now, this is interesting. We're talking about blemishes in people and in animals. We saw that the standard was, if the Rambam said, blemishes that are common denominator between people and animals, that was also something that after the fact invalidates the service. He says here, Shlosha mine mumim, just backtracking back in the 6th parak of the 5th halacha, says there's 3 types of mums, blemishes. Yesh mimun shein poslina kohen milavod v'abei milikrav. If the Kohen has it, he can't serve. If the animal has it, it cannot be a sacrifice. There are those that apply only to people, blemishes of humans. And then there are mumin she'ein poslim, non-disqualifying blemishes. But the sages enacted them. Next halacha, the Rambam says, Kol mi sheish bo mum sheposel b'adam v'avad bein shogeg bein mezid avodato pesula. So this invalidates the service. So one of these Kohanim with these first type blemishes serves, he invalidates the entire service. They have to find it and do it over. And he also should be punished with lashes. If it's a strictly human blemish, after the fact, even though he should be lashed for it, and he has not invalidated the service. And Rashi says he shouldn't even be lashed. We saw that. We are now in the 8th parak, the 8th halacha, at least according to this edition. I'm going to put it on the screen for the benefit of those at home. Please hold on. Sorry about that. I had some computer problems. The computer died this morning. So that which I had saved I didn't save it yet, so I lost it. So I'm going to start again here. We're going to look in the Machon, as usual, we're going to use the Machon Mamre edition. I found already that there's some differences in the vowelization, how they spell the words. Even here, there's some differences. And also, if you're at home and you see there's a problem, please tell me. Question coming in? No question. Let's share the screen. Here's the book of Avodah. We're going to see over here that there's some overlap in Biat HaMikdash and Isurei Mizbeach. Biat HaMikdash is talking about the blemishes that a person can have and an animal can have that disqualified from being from the animal from being a korban or from the Kohen serving in the temple. And in Isurei Mizbeach, we're going to go into other things that basically disqualify animals. Right? It has the animals like this, so you can't put it on the altar. So that's how the Ram broke it up. We'll keep this in mind. This isn't the last word on these matters. Okay, so stay tuned for the next one. We're in like I said, the 8th parak, the 8th halacha. I'm just going to see if it overlaps over here. Yes, it does. Okay, it talks about the blemishes of the lips, Kohen's lips. Before we saw blemishes of the mouth, now we have in the lips. And those, when it said the mouth, it referred to just the animal and person. His upper lip sticking out above the lower lip. Most people, you see them close their mouth, their lips line up. Now, some people have a lip that droops over the other one. His lower lip is just going way too far out. Okay, not necessarily his jaw, but his lower lip. And Misha piv rafui v'ro yored mi piv. He's got a weak mouth such that his saliva drips out. It means he drools. Okay, you don't want a person like that. Shloshaba beten, 3 in the belly, which are Misha kreso sava. He's got a swollen belly. It means he's got a pot belly. Or unusually obese, as we would say. In the olden days, obesity was less common. Why? Because they just didn't have enough food. They're lucky if they didn't starve. Most people were not exceptionally fat. It's only in the modern era that you actually have in only certain places that you have people who are obese. Okay? Well, maybe. I think that there's also some genetic places where obesity helps. They say, like, let's say Eskimos. They have genetics that allow them to store up a lot of fat because, they went without food. But generally speaking, the type of people living in the Middle East and in temperate areas should not be have such large stomachs. Misha taburo yotze ve'eno shokea kishar b'nei adam. One whose belly button sticks out and it's not sunken like everybody else, but you and I call an outie. Anybody with an outie belly button is disqualifying from being a Kohen. You know anybody like that? It's kind of weird. There's someone here with an outie, but she's not a Kohen, so it doesn't bother her. Misha dadav shochvin al bitno kedadei ha'isha. A man, basically it says he's got large man boobs. for lack of a better term. Okay, doesn't mean pecs. If he's muscular, so that's fine. Doesn't then they don't sag. If it's has a certain sagginess, so that's a problem. Okay, it's okay for a Kohen to be muscular and in shape, but it's not okay to be like this. So you see that these are also functions of basically obesity. Even if a person has an innie, I've been told if he's got such a big stomach, the pressure causes it like to look like an Audi. Yeah, it's happened to some people. And also this last thing, which we don't want to discuss, because I find it unpleasant. I didn't know what a better way to describe it. Also, is a function of bad diet, lack of exercise. 3 in the back, shlosha bagav, be'eluheim, mi shidrato akuma, someone with a bent spine, basically like scoliosis. Okay, mi yatzat chuyam shidrato, bein shebal talachutz, o nichnasa lefnim, o natalat stadim, v'zehu bal chatoret. Okay. Katoret is a person who basically has dislocated vertebrae. It's sticking out, it's too sunk in, it's too much to the side. Yeah, that could be quite painful and cause all sorts of problems and nerve problems, but you could see this, okay? He should have a normal spine. Misha tafach basar bagabov and asek kachoteret. He's got a bulge. It's basically swollen over there, and he looks like he has got a choteret, a little bit of a hunch. Afal pi shelo zazach huyamim koma. Even though all the vertebrae are actually in place, it's still a mum because it looks like it. Remember, it's all about outer look. Someone has an internal injury. He can even be a trait for the Rambam said. He's been terribly injured on the inside, doesn't show on the outside. He's still Kohen, even though he'll be dead soon. Shisha bayadayim, 6 blemishes of the hands. Eluheim, misha yishlo yetera be'etzba be'etzbot yadav afilu hayu sheish v'sheish. Okay, he's got extra fingers, even if it looks symmetrical. Because if you see someone with, at least the same number on each hand, at least it looks, doesn't look different. No, he looks different from most people. Cartoon characters, well, they have a thumb and 3 fingers. What is that about? So that's also a problem. If he cut off the extra finger, has it surgically removed, so he's now kosher. But if this extra finger had bones in it, remember we said, according to the Rambam's understanding based on the Mishneh, that what makes something an avar is that it has to have flesh and bones, which means certain parts of your body are technically not avarim. Avarim pnimim, let's say, even the heart. The heart has no bone. That's not an avar. Neither is the spleen or the liver and things like that. That's not a technical avar. Nine afkamina, an avar counts as an entire maith, for example. It has to have bone. Yet a section of your finger, that counts as a complete avar, organ, for lack of a better word. So if this person had an extra finger, he got rid of it. Shouldn't he be kosher Kohen? Now he has 5 fingers. No, because he cut off something that had bone. If it was a boneless finger, I guess only had cartilage or something, or just extra skin that looked like a finger. So that is the type that could be surgically removed and revalidate the Kohen. But if not, he's stuck with this. Okay. Anybody also sees a note from here. There's Tosfos says about having a spine. The Tosfos say that type of spinal problem also invalidates an animal, so it should be in category 1, and therefore, if a Kohen served with this spinal problem, he would be invalidating the service. All these mumim, once again, are mum type 2, and technically speaking, the Kohen who serves with these blemishes does not invalidate the service. What do they say about the fingers? No, okay, let's go on. Misha chaser etzba miado, a person who's missing one of his fingers. Okay, Misha shtei etzbotav. Etzbot yadav klutot. What does that klutot mean? Ad lamata min aparik. It means they're webbed. Okay, until under the joint. Okay. If he could open them up to a certain point, now they're kosher. There are people who they grow up with they have certain webbed feet or webbed toes, right, and webbed hands. There is surgery to break it apart. How is it? What is it? Do you remember Johnny Tremaine? He's a fictional character. Remember what happened to Johnny Tremaine? He got some sort of scar tissue that held his fingers together. I think that's the plot device that gets the whole thing going. He works as a smith's apprentice, and something happens to him when he's working with the hot metal, and he scars himself. And only at the end of the book does he discover there's a doctor who knows how to cut open the scar tissue, and then his problem is solved. Even rudimentary surgery in revolutionary times is able to help him. Okay, so sometimes they had this, and sometimes you could just open it up. It's something they knew how to do. Surgery is old, by the way. They were doing surgery, something that they could have done. Of course, they didn't have the methods we have nowadays, and it could be fatal. but there were basic surgeries they used to do in the olden days, and this is one of those. Okay. Sorry to bring up from American fiction, but it's some fiction actually has back in the olden days at least had some merit, some redeeming value. Next, over here, it's talking about this when he says the parak is talking about the one that's close to the kafayat. Kafayat is here, so it means up to this knuckle. Okay, mishetz botav murkavot zo al gabe zo. Instead of a hammer toe, he's got a hammer finger like this. One finger just he can't do it like that. And they actually have a picture over here. Do you guys have a picture of Etzbach Klutot in this picture? Yeah, okay. Our pictures are different, so we're using different textbooks. Next, Misha Pika. What's a Pika? Yotzei Migudlo. He's got this. This is called a Pika, and it's bulging out the wrong way. How do you have Pika spelled? Over here, I have it Pei Yud Kuf Hey, and that's you have it Pei Kuf Hey, and there's a dot in the Kuf. What's the nafkamina? The way Makbili has it, like you have it.
Yours is Pika.
So
ours is Pika.
Okay, and that's the pronunciation. What's the significance of this difference? The significance of this difference is that if you have a verb, if you have a noun like that, chirik, dot in the middle letter, and then silent kamatz hey, kamat silent hey. So that means there's a two-letter, a double shorish there. For example, riba is from the word reish bet bet. The shorish is reish bet bet. So you have a dot in the bet to make up for the missing bet. And in this case, pika, the way Makbili has it, the shorish would be pakak, pei kuf kuf. Mm-hmm. And every other example, diba tamra al avihem. So what's the word diba come from? It means like basically lashon hara, because the shorish of diba is dalid bet bet, dovev, speaking. And if you have a word like this, pika, the shorish is pei vav or yud kuf, like shira. Okay, so the question is it pei vav kuf is the shorish or pei kuf kuf? That's the nafkamina. And even though they're related shorishes, they're not exactly the same. So either way, it's jutting out over there. And this word is going to come up now a few times in these halachas. It's good to know grammar and understand why Hebrew is what it is, because when we see it before, Hebrew has intrinsic value, and it's good to speak Hebrew all the time. But if you're not speaking Hebrew all the time, it doesn't really matter. You're not obligated. And when we said if you're learning, also you could use lashon chazal. There were some when they say it says a Rav Kook had a hakpada that he grew up with. They only spoke Hebrew on Shabbos. The Vilna Gaon, it says, when he was the Vilna Gaon, or as a grown-up, he only spoke Hebrew. To those people who knew him, he only spoke Hebrew. What? They didn't have, it was centuries before Ben Yehuda, who was speaking Hebrew. He demanded of the people around him, we speak Hebrew. So, yes, when he had to deal with the Hamonim, he spoke Yiddish, and he had to deal with the authorities, spoke Polish and Russian. He was, wasn't involved in things, and he knew German because, he went to Germany for a certain point. So when he spoke to Rav Chaim Volozhiner and Mendelssohn and the rest of those people who with whom he did learn and who he did give to whom he gave his precious time, he only spoke Hebrew. Okay, and that was well known. So Rav Kook also, they say Rav Kook came to, well, this is a matter of history. Rav Kook also adopted this as the official chief rabbi. He only spoke Hebrew. That was his thing. So he came to New York. What did he do? So either he spoke in Hebrew and had a translator, and then when he had to speak to like dignitaries, he spoke to LaGuardia, the mayor, and others who came to visit him. He spoke in English to them. So he was in England for a while. He knew how to speak English. The question was, why does he speak only in Hebrew? Because as the official representative of the Jews in the land of Palestine, and all that, he's the chief rabbi, he must only speak Hebrew. And there was one case where he had to give a speech in English, so he gave it over to someone else to read for him, and he stood by his side, and then he said, Amen. Afterwards, Amen to what he said. I say that. But Rav Kook did not speak anything but Hebrew as a matter of public policy. Okay, so that's a very important thing, perhaps a lesson for the rest of us. We should all, halavai, live to Rav Kook's personal standards of behavior and interpersonal interaction. Halavai, even our way we could relate to God should, have somehow just a taste of the way he used to behave. What was it they say, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach? Well, what did he learn? What lesson did he learn from Rav Kook? The Mashgiach told him, you want to learn Hasmada? So go see Rav Kook. So him and his Chavrusa went. They went to Rav Kook's house. They opened the door a crack. They saw Rav Kook sitting at his desk. just studying and saying over his, his teachings and all that, said just seeing Rav Kook studying and so focused on that was enough inspiration for them. Okay, so we should live to see these things. Mishahu iter yad mino, a lefty. Iter is an expression meaning he can't use his right hand, means he's a lefty. Kohanim lefties are psulim. What about ambidextrous? That's not considered iter. It just means sholeit b'shtei adav. So that's fine. You could do. What's the problem with the lefty? Because the lefty will use his left hand for the service, and that's not right. It's about appearances. If he's perfectly ambidextrous, so he can use his right hand, there's no visual problem. Sholeit b'shtei adav kosher. If he's ambidextrous, he's kosher. Doesn't mean the left is a problem. It's that he only uses his left. And we're going to see also there's talking about a lefty in his foot. How do you decide that? Arba'a be'evrei hazera, 4 in the genitalia. Eluhain misha kisa beitzim gadol v'aroch ad shemegia l'arkubotav. Someone whose scrotum is so big. I've seen someone, by the way, who had this. Ad shemegia l'arkubotav. There was a case. I was a Hatzalah worker once, and I saw someone. The old man had this problem, and I didn't expect this, but yeah, it could happen. By the way, why can the scrotum suddenly become enlarged and inflated? Because of some sort of fluid there. Remember, it's very elastic. It's mostly skin. So it has a high capacity, and this could happen. So this would be a mum. His member is so long it can reach his knees. Now, I don't think that's a problem for most people, but this is what the Mishneh calls a Baal Gever. Okay? What does Gever mean? Gever, ironically, means a rooster. Okay, or just means very extremely manly, and that's all we're going to say there. But you could understand that certain even English expressions, which we're not going to say here, have their basis in the Hebrew term. Okay, Misha nimrichu ashacha v'heim kis shel beitzim. His testicles have been crushed; they've been squished too much. Okay, this could happen from some sort of terrible injury. Okay. Misha ruach b'ashachav. He has the ruach in there. What is the ruach in ashachav? It means there's wind in there. It means it's swollen testicles. V'hu miruach ashech hamur b'Torah. This is the miruach ashech mentioned in the Torah. Ashech is the biblical word for a testicle. What's called in Chazal beitzim is ashachim in biblical, and nowadays modern Hebrew once again. Okay. So that's unfortunate, and so basically a Kohen can basically hide this from everybody. Like we said, the Sanhedrin's job is to check Kohanim. Kohanim have to submit basically to regular physicals. They can't ignore this type of thing if they have these types of problems. Let's say he happens to go to mikveh or shower, whatever it is, when other Kohanim are around, they're not going to notice these problems. He's going to try to hide it. By the way, it was harder to hide these things, like it says in the Gemara in Yavamis. It used to be. No one really had privacy. The lavatory was, a few people could be there at once. Certainly bathhouses. Assume the bathhouse means you're going to see other people naked. And it says a man can find out about a woman's munim that she has, if she has some sort of appearance problem. Why? He just asks his female relatives who've probably seen her at the bathhouse. Nowadays, we have a much higher standard of privacy than they had ever in Mishneh times, rabbinic times. It's only due to the advent of modern plumbing that we have this. And many of us, thank God, are more squeamish. We're much more tznuim than they were. That's why the rabbi built a mikveh here. Basically, the mikveh was a bathhouse. He didn't like that. He says, not right. If we could have, every man have his own private mikveh, ma tova manoim. And he actually did that. He built 5 private mikvahs with 5 private shower rooms and 5 private changing rooms. So nowadays, these things don't happen. So you're not going to see this. But it used to be, unfortunately, seeing more of this on others was a fact of life. Okay, thank God. Thank God who has brought us to live in this era where we have such high standards of hygiene and health and privacy, and we have opportunities to keep all the mitzvahs of the Torah. We just don't take them. What are we going to do? Chamisha asar b'shokaim uvar raglaim. What do you have, shokaim and raglaim, or raglaim and shokaim? Because last time was reversed. Okay. Here's legs, basically in shokaim is the upper legs, and raglaim is the lower parts of legs. Misha shokav akumot ad shemechaber regel ve'ein arkubotav nogot zabazo. He's got such bent legs, or I guess knees that aren't right, that he puts his feet together, but he can't keep his legs together. His knees can't keep together. If he puts his feet together, his knees are apart. Never see someone like that. It could happen. Misha pikato yotzeit. The pika once again is this bone or this round knob of a bone thing on top of the ankle. The pika hi ha'etzem ha'agol. The pika is the round bone shelamala min ha'kev mitzapnim, which is above the ankle on the interior side. V'hu domeh lefika she tovat b'anashim. Tovot b'anashim. It's the pika, which is the device that they'd use for spinning the wool. I've never seen such a thing, but they have this. Okay. Nowadays, how many women have used to be? A decent woman has to know how to create clothing and wash clothing. That was the main work. Cooking and making food and creating clothing and washing clothing. That's what life was about back then. So if a woman couldn't, the Mishneh assumes that most women do this unless they're very wealthy and they have servant women doing it for them. So all the women use this type of thing. Next. Misha akivo yotzei lacharav ad shenimsa shok ki'iluhu be'emtza raglo omeid. This person has that his ankle or his heel sticks out so much to the backside, he looks like basically his foot is sitting on a T. See this picture over here? The bone, the leg bone is going up. He has foot on both sides of it. Normally, our leg bone rises up from the back of our foot. But in this case, his ankle sticks out so much. The heel sticks out so much that it looks like another side of his foot. Okay, yeah, that could be kind of scary. That could also be. It seems like if someone has that problem, it's actually painful. Misha parsato rechava kashel avaz, af al pi sheina kuta kashel avaz. He is basically his foot. He's so flat-footed, he looks like a duck, even if it's not webbed. Okay, so flat-footed, he's got like duck-like feet. Now, you could have fallen arches and flat feet. That's a problem. Most people don't even know what it looks like. I've been told I have flat feet. But you look at my foot, it doesn't look like anything crazy. But, what? Yeah, because you have to support yourself. But either way, you look at pictures here. Do you see a picture there? It means a person basically has very flat feet, very wide. So it looks like he's a duck, even if it's not webbed. Misha pika yotzeit migudolo. He's got one of these bumps. It looks like another peacock coming out of his foot thumb, means the big toe. Okay? Bump in the big toe. Mi sheyesh baraglo etzba yatera. An extra toe. Afilu sheish v'sheish. Even if it's nice and symmetrical, 6 toes on one foot, 6 toes on the other, that's still a problem. V'im chatacha kasher v'usha lo yaba etzem. Same thing with he said with amputating the extra finger. If he cut off this extra toe, then he's technically kosher as long as his extra toe wasn't a real toe which had its own bones to it. Does this happen to people? Yes. Misha chasar achat metzbaot raglav. Someone who's missing one of his toes. I was told that going back to the Yaakov Vinu's birth, it says Esav had a condition basically when he was born. All red, hairy, and the Chazal say even had a set of teeth. Basically, he was kind of like, he was a baby. Other than that, he was a baby. He was a little bit ahead. Most of us become red and hairy and have teeth later on in life. So even the hairy even had a beard. Okay. So that's caused by a genetic condition. There are people who are born like that. You could have Esav-like things. And it says Yaakov Vinu was nice and smooth, a regular baby, and as he's growing up, he was a goody-goody. But there's a medrash that says Yaakov Vinu was what? Born circumcised. Being born circumcised doesn't mean that you're cut. It means just that you have very little foreskin such that the glands is already exposed. And that also happens among the population. We've had a child here born with such a thing, and they say that there are certain noteworthy individuals. There was a fellow who was born in Tunisia, became one of the members of the government in Israel a few decades ago. The rabbis came and said when he was born, they said he'll become a sar v'gadol v'Yisrael. He became a literal sar, because sar is what they do, a minister in the government. That was predicted. So they say the same genetic abnormality that causes the Esavness could also cause what Yaakov Vinu had, the foreskin issue. Just sometimes you're fortunate like a Yaakov Vinu and it causes you to look superior, and sometimes you get the Esav side of the stick and it makes you hairy and red and and toothy. Okay, what are you going to do next? Where were we? Over here. Misha chaser achat mitzvot. Okay, he's missing a toe. Misha etzbotav murkavot zo al gabe zo, a hammer toe. He's got one toe stuck on the other. Some people have this. Have you seen it before? It happens to be due to the way people walk and all that. Sometimes there's more of a genetic proclivity to it that may cause it to happen. So that's one of those things. Next one. Misha raglo kulo shava. Oh, sorry, I skipped something here. Mishayu etzbot raglov klutot, webbed toes, ad lamatam in a parak, even beyond the latam in a parak, the joint. Don't forget, look at your toes, look at your fingers. How many joints do you have above your fingers over here? 2, right? How many joints do you have in your toes? Just 1, less. Okay, so he doesn't have to find which parak it is. It's the one joint. Osha chatachan v'yifrishan kasher. Sorry, v'yimayu at a parak. Osha chatachan v'yifrishan kasher. So if they only go up to the parak, they don't go beyond the parak, or if he cuts them open, then like we saw with the fingers, so he's kosher again. Misha raglo kulo shava. Shimsa rochav paset botav kerochav akavo uchilu hi chaticha shava. A perfectly flat foot. Not that it makes it wide like a duck, but it's just the one level. Okay, raglo shava means from the foot until the bone starts to lift. There's no rise there. Okay, like a cartoon character. See that picture? Okay. Misha raglo akuma domela magal. It's round like a sickle. His foot is round like a sickle. Shnimsa pas raglo sheyesh bo etzbaot imakivo ki'ilu hem shnei rashei hakeshet. This picture over here, his foot is rounded like this. Okay, standing on edge like that. That's the magal thing. Okay? A foot like that, too high an arch, basically. You ever see this? Oh, really? Okay. That which they used to do in China, foot binding. Okay, they used to think it's a feminine thing for women to have little feet. So they did this torturous thing where they have super, tighten the shoes and the socks and these bounds on their feet when they're younger, so that their feet never grow right. And it's a terrible practice. Whatever, they used to do this. Go figure. In India, they used to burn widows. The Far East, they didn't have an Abrahamic tradition of chesed and all that. So they're capable of just doing these terrible things to people. So that's what they used to do. I'm sure that if someone had a bound foot also, then it'll also be a create a moon. Next, over here, Misha raglo chalula. It's hollow. V'hu sheyeh emtza'ah gavua me'al haaretz v'nimtza kishomed omed al kivo v'al etzbot raglo. Okay, he's sorry. This is the picture of magal. It's rounded like that to the side, and what we just described like this is the one he's describing now. Okay, it's either rounded in this direction or rounded in that direction. Do you see the picture? Here, I'll put it on the screen now so everyone can see it. The one on the right is what we just described. Okay, rounded feet like a keshet. And here it is from this angle, 2 round over there. I've never seen this before, by the way. This type of thing on the right side. Good to correct that. Next, Hamakish bekarsulav be'echem alech. He's got knocky knees when he walks. Mi shehu makish bar butav be'echem alech. We saw that. Oh, karsulav. In this case, karsulav means his feet, his ankles basically are knocking. Ar kubotav means his knees. Mi shehu iter regel yamino. He is an iter. He's a foot lefty. What's a foot lefty? How are you left-footed? Okay, so I guess when you have to kick something. Most of us, if we had to kick something, we would kick with our right foot, correct? Because that's what you do. Or you ever notice how people, they say, put your hands together without thinking about it. Go like that. You always do it. Which way? Which hand comes out on top and which hand comes out on the bottom? The left one on top. That means you're right-handed. Okay. If you go like that, see, I don't even do it. If they say reflexively like this, it makes your right hand. I don't know if that's 100% true, but there's a test. When one has to climb steps, let's say you see a few steps ahead of you. Do you start with your left foot or your right foot? Now start paying attention. Depends?
Yeah.
Okay. So most of us start with our left foot, I think, because your right foot gives you more power. Now you're going to be self-conscious about this. Okay, you're going to see the stairs. You're going to think, "Oh man, now we're talking about what makes a right-footed or left-footed." So start going up the steps. Shoot a basketball. You see how a right-handed person shoots a basketball. I think, thank God we grew up with American sports. You assume you bat right, you throw right, correct? And then there are people who are trained to be switch hitters or whatever. But most people don't throw right and left. There's like one in a million can do such a thing like that. So perfectly ambidextrous. So there's a usual test. If you're right-footed or left-footed, normally you could see a person who's left-footed. He gives preference. Most of us, when we start climbing steps, we put our left foot forward, only because we're pushing off with the right. And if we'd have to kick a ball or something in front of us, we kick with our right foot. That's usually the indication that a person is properly right-footed. When is a Kohen? What does it matter? Kohen, what does he do with his feet? What does a Kohen do with his feet that's significant, that would actually see a difference. Have you ever seen, you could look at a person, all these other things, if the Kohen's carrying the blood to the altar and then spilling the blood on the altar with his left hand instead of his right hand, so they see that. You have to literally, you're going to see, they have to literally throw pieces of the korban from the edge of the altar's ramp onto the fire. They have to give it a little throw. So you'll see that there's a right person who's right-handed or left-handed. That would show. Where in the temple would you see a difference? There's not even steps in the temple, and they're not kicking anything.
Have to walk up the ramp.
They have to walk up the ramp. So even then, you could tell. Apparently, Chazal were good at this. They can even see the way a lefty walks. So now you're gonna pay attention. Just like in shul, sometimes you look around. Don't daydream in shul. Don't daydream when you're wearing tefillin. What are you gonna do when you're a bar mitzvah boy? What do? You start noticing who's wearing tefillin on his left hand and who's wearing tefillin on his right hand. And what do you see? Everybody's wearing tefillin on his left hand except for that guy, and my friend. Okay, that's what you do. So eventually, as you could pay more attention to these things, when you're a child, you suddenly you learn to pay attention to things that you don't pay attention to. When you learn about something, the first time you learn about, driving an automobile, suddenly you focus on, everybody, see how people are doing it. Tefillin are amazing. You get tefillin, suddenly you start noticing things about the tefillin. When you start to read, suddenly you realize, there's signs all over the place. There's words all over the place. You can just read. You've seen that when you teach a child to read, and suddenly the child's looking up, Abba, it says this, and that says that, and that says that. Look, it says it. Okay, good. Suddenly notice it. Arba'ah b'chol haguf. 4 general blemishes that apply only to Kohanim. Mi shegufo gadol me'evarav. He's out of proportion. His torso is a certain size, but then he's got legs and arms that are too short. You see this illustration? You guys have an illustration there that shows it. Basically, a disproportionate person. Misha gufo katan me'evarav. I mentioned this last week when discussing certain people who are freakishly tall. How it's, usually you have this, their limbs don't look right, but then there's some who are freakishly tall and they look perfectly proportional. So it's like almost disturbing. Misha gufo katan me'evarav. His torso is too small for his limbs, or his limbs are too long. They don't seem to match. What is this? Because people have noticed since ancient times, the Greeks noticed this, Da Vinci has the whole thing. There are certain proportions that are normal for a man. Basically, they say like the arm span is the same as his height. An amma is equivalent to a certain ratio. There's these golden ratios that have to do with the person's proportions. So you can notice this. Ha'aroch bioter, someone who's just incredibly tall. Too tall, unusually tall. Hananas, a person who's extremely short, basically a midget. V'hu hakatzar bioter. Okay. Ad sheyu muflagin misharam. It means that they're exceptionally, freakishly tall or freakishly short. Most of us fall into the category we're not this or we're not that, but there are some people who are, too tall. If you have a whole family of tall Kohanim, so that day you could say that they're all serving, it doesn't stand out. But suddenly this guy who's 6'10" shows up to serve at the temple, and he's a Kohen, they might disqualify him and say, sorry, you're a muflag, you don't look right. When would they especially want to have this? They have honor guards. Dignitaries show up on the airplane or whatever it is. They meet the president and the king, whoever. So they tried to find soldiers who all look good in uniform, can all just stand there. Notice how they tried to find soldiers who are what? All decent height. You don't want to have a short shoulder and a tall one, like cartoonish honor guard. Shows a really tall and lanky guard, and then a really short, fat guard. Okay, that's a joke. You want to have an honor guard. When they have the Kohanim, they say at Passover, passing the cups, the silver cups and the gold cups, the line, passing with the blood, whatever. You can imagine that they would try to have Kohanim who are doing that who are similar in height. Just because to pass it, if they have guys tall and short, you're passing up and down. You want the line to move, so they would have this hakpadah for the sake of aesthetics that they were in similar height. And it also says that Abaye, we're going to see this sugya later, when there were some Persians who wanted to know how to offer sacrifice to God in Persia. Gentiles are allowed to offer sacrifice wherever they want. So the Jewish sage can teach them how to do so. So one of the things he told them is make sure you find 2 boys to administer the service. They are going to, they should be of similar height. Why? Is that a halacha? No, it looks better if they're similar in height. Okay. Shmona be'ora basar. 8 blemishes of the flesh. Generally ones, not limited to a certain part of the body. This we saw also with apologies to those people who are like this, but like we saw in the Mishneh last week, it used to be that people from far away were not in the land of Israel. If you were, basically it says, Germany, from the extreme north of Europe, you were unusual in the land of Israel. You were very white. And if you were from sub-Saharan Africa, you were black. And that's not the way most of them were at the time. I showed my children, we have a picture of this in one of those Humashim, which have all sorts of visual aids. It shows you the way the Egyptians represented in one of their wall paintings, different ethnicities. And it shows the Nubians, and it shows Egyptians, it shows Hittites and Babylonians and Egyptians, right? And they all have slightly different skin tones. So most of them, there's some who are whiter than others, some redder than others, and some darker than others. So it says a Kushi. That means a person who's completely black. Now, it doesn't mean a person who's, let's say, sub-Saharan black is disqualified from being Jewish. There's something necessarily wrong with it. Or you could have even a Kohen like this. If there's a Kohen, let's say he's as Ashkenazic as they come, one of the most lightest skinned guys you have. His wife is Yotzeit Ethiopia. She's completely Jewish, but she's Ethiopian. So the child will be, this color. So that will disqualify him from the kahuna according to the standards the sages said. It used to be that kahuna wasn't a regular yichus like regular other Jews. It was limited. It was had to be patrilineal. Just know of the Jews who came out of Ethiopia, they don't have any Levites or Kohanim among them. They have a tradition that they're all Shevet Dan. That's what they claim. So you can understand that any of them would have to be diluted in the population before they could do this. But it says a person who's as white as cheese also. Now, this is not talking about an albino necessarily. That, of course, would be disqualified. Just talking about a person who's too pale. The Mishneh concludes, B'nai Yisrael, you should just know they're not as dark as the Kushim, and they're not as light as the Germanim. They're somewhere in between. And many of us have actually become too light, perhaps because our ancestors spent too much time in Europe. Hillel was asked this very question. Why are the Talmudim look like this? And why do these people have slanty eyes? Why do these people have slightly flatter feet than everybody, etc.? Remember, the guy there, they had a contest who can upset Hillel, who can get Hillel's goat on Erev Shabbos. And they were asking these questions. Hillel basically said, Darwinian adaptation. You live in a place where the forces, the environmental forces are acting on certain things, you're going to select for certain genes. So in places where they have the wind and blowing sand into their eyes, they're going to have eyes that are better adapted. That's just how it is. And if you live in places where it's much sunnier, you're going to have more melanin in your skin. That's what happens. So Eretz Yisrael is a very moderate place. Rambam says God gave us, Kuzari echoes this, God gave us the best land where we don't have extreme weather, right? Living here, someone comes from New York, I know it. And thank God, the weather here is a lot more moderate and stable than it is in where we came from. So it's not going to have much of an effect on our skin tone. We're not going to be so light. We're not going to be so dark. So let's take a few generations where Jews start to look like Jews used to look. And the Jews who have been here longer are adapting more to look like Jews once looked. And it says here, Ha'adom kishani, a person who's very red. Obviously not, like again, this is red. He's saying this example. There were some people who were redder than others. Native Americans were redder. Okay. Notice how he doesn't say yellow. They never saw Asians before. Chazal knew about people who were redder. Chazal people knew about too light and too dark. They know about people who just like different skin tone. Okay. Asians were like things that they don't even discuss. It's almost a broken, different part of the world. People who have blemishes of the skin. Negaim is he said sarat is type of negaim. So the skin looks different. It says negaim torim. Why? Because if it's sarat, nega tamei, what's the din? He's not supposed to be in the temple. He's a mitzori. He's kicked out of town even, right? He can only come to the temple once he's fully purified himself. So we're not even going to say that a kohen with sarat is disqualified. He's disqualified to even be in Jerusalem. So he has a nega that's tahor, but still it sticks out like the bohak. Bohakhu, parach ba'or tahor, this particular blemish that's spreading in the skin. So it's the other kohen pronounces him tahor, shkayach. What makes the tzaras tamei? A kohen pronounces it tamei. So in this case, it's pronounced tahor, but it still sticks out. Shenishtana or haor mechamat davar cher. His skin is changed for some reason. Kigon sarevet hamichva. He's burnt. And also, this is another nega tahor. Okay, fine. We just got a message. Okay, there was Cole sent us a message. Misha itaba or panav shuma sheish basayar. he has on the skin of his face. What does he have? A shuma is basically like a wart which has hair growing out of it. Okay, if it's small, awful pisha ena ki isar ela b'chol it doesn't matter the size. Once this wart-like thing has hair coming out of it, then it's a disqualification. Kind of scary. Why is it that warts? Ever noticed that warts also sometimes hairs coming in them? Is that the connection between the two? I don't know. We have to ask someone. Okay. Misha I thought be'or panav shumak isar yoter. Or he has a wart that's as big as an isar or bigger. Baleha deal dudlim. Skin hangings. Vushi daldel ha'or v'abasar. Skin, just flabby skin somewhere. Okay, it has to be skin and flesh. Oh halach luchit sheyish be'or shnidaldel be'ezem makom shemi kol guf reizemum. He has got some sort of moisture there within the skin that's hanging down. Okay, wherever it will be. So that is a mum. I lost my place over here. What does he see here? Okay, it looks like basically fat is displaced fat. Sometimes you have this also. A person who has some sort of herniated something or other just looks wrong. When does this happen? If a person gained too much weight and then lost a lot of weight, he's still extra flabby or he has the wrong things. This could also cause other things that we saw before. Let's try to stay healthy and you won't end up like this. Okay. And there's other four mumin that a person can have. Ha-cheresh. What's a cheresh? It means he's deaf, basically. And usually when Chazal say it means deaf mute. He can't talk either. Yeah. And the shoteh, a person who's just, he's not all there. Nice way of saying it. Ha-nechpeh. Afilu yamim rabim. Okay. Nechpeh is a person who's epileptic. He gets seizures. Person who's always suddenly troubled, he has his basically insanity. Okay, or it happens at very specific times. You could have this, by the way. I've seen that there's one guy who has he has his mishigas. Other than that, he might even be intelligent and capable of all sorts of critical thoughts. He just has his craziness. He thinks he's what he's not, like the Rambam says. Okay. I would include this if you had a person who's really, they used to say this person, a man who thinks he's a woman or a man who thinks he's a dog. Okay, that guy's nuts. The guy could be a physics professor and be incredibly smart. He could be a Talmud Chacham, but if he just thinks he's what he's not, he's a Meshugana basically. Okay, so that is disqualified. Nimsu kol mumina poslim b'kohanim me'av arbaim. So the sum total of all these blemishes in Kohanim is 140. Zeo klalam. And here's the total, the totals. Shmona barosh, 8 in the head. Shnaim batzavar, 2 in the neck. Tisha boz 9 in the ears. Chamisha bagvinim, 5 in the eyebrows. Shiva barisa ayin, 7 in the eyelashes. Tisha asar bainayim, 19 in the eyes. Tisha bachotem, 9 in the nose. Tisha bapeh, 9 in the mouth. Ushlosha babeten, 3 in the belly. Shlosha bagav, 3 in the back. Shiva bayadayim, 7 in the hands. Vishisha asar bevrei azera, 14 in the genitalia. Ve'esrim baraglaim, 20 in the legs. Ushmona bechol haguf, 8 in the entire body. How did they just said 4 in the entire guf? No, it means included with the ones we said before that also are applied to animals. Ushmona ba'or basar, 8 in the skin. Shiva bechoach haguf recho, and 7 with the overall health of the body and its smell. Remember, we said before that the fellow with the stinky, so he can't serve. We explained each one of them one by one. Now we're going to get to the last category. One's the sages enacted. They don't look right, so they're psul. Misha Nasru Risainov, someone whose eyelashes fell out, even though you can still see it, the follicles are still there, he's disqualified. Umisha Nitlu Shinov, a Kohen who is missing his teeth. Now, it's okay. Many of us might have wisdom teeth pulled. That doesn't count necessarily. It means a person with like gap tooth. Okay, looks wrong. Is there a way to do it? Nowadays we have dental implants. Chazal even imagined Chazal had fake teeth. The idea of putting a gold tooth. Why do you stick a gold tooth in someone? It works. It's held together by the pressure. And they use gold because gold is soft, so they could wedge it in between the teeth. It would stay. Yeah, and it also doesn't rust. Okay, Gold is, like we said a few months ago, was it? Gold is completely unreactive. You can technically eat gold. You make it to flakes. There, people eat it. People really want to waste their money. They burn $100 bills and they eat gold. So gold teeth were basically a problem. It would stick out. He's missing his teeth. Nowadays we have dental implants. Does that count as the tooth? You heard about that? Dentures? I don't know. We create dentures. I don't know. Okay, ask your not your local Orthodox rabbi. Ask your local Orthodox Sanhedrin for psak on these things. Now we're going to get to Zarut. You need something, young man? You're looking for something?
Yeah.
No, go get it. Okay. A foreigner who serves in the temple. We've mentioned this point before. Let's read it here. Zar is someone who's not a Kohen. Zar shavad b'mikdash avodato psula. His service is invalid. A Zar is a person not a Kohen. V'chayav mitah b'dei shamayim. He is liable to death at the hands of heaven. Shnemar v'azar hakarev yumah. Rav Shechter's line. Mipia Shmuel lamdu she'ein chiyuv zeh ela l'karev lavoda. Zar means non-Kohen, not Gentile. It means non-Kohen. It's a much larger category. Hakarev doesn't mean coming into the temple precincts. It means serving on the sacrificial service. L'karev lavoda. And yumat doesn't mean put to death by people. It means put to death by heaven. So the fellow who said, this sign at the Chayil that we discovered, no Gentiles beyond this point, fits the verse, Zar Karev Yumat. No, he's wrong, because he gets Zar wrong, and he got Karev wrong, and he got Yumat wrong. Other than that, he's right. Me'echan he's here, love. Where's the pasuk say this? Where's the warning? V'zar lo yikrav alechem. No non-Kohen should approach to you. Okay? Aaron was told about this after the Korach rebellion. Aaron was God told him again, and he said also regarding Shevet Levi, you have specific jobs, and the Levites have specific jobs, and no one's supposed to encroach on them. Ezahuzar kol she'eno mizera Aaron azacharim. Anybody who's not of the seed of Aaron in the male line. So I say I lucked out. You're your father's son, but I'd like to say that my mother's father was a direct descendant of Aaron. Okay, Ben Achar Ben. So I'm the first generation that's not Aaronite in that family line. Okay, but I said my grandfather was a direct descendant of Aaron who qualified for this. Shnemar v'arechu b'nei Aaron says instead of saying the Kohanim, it says the ones who arranged the wood on the fire. Okay, it says b'nei Aaron. B'nei Aaron, it's the sons of Aaron. V'lo b'not Aaron, not the daughters of Aaron. Why would you have thought so? Because halachically speaking, a few times in Shas, a Kohenet means what? A Kohen's daughter, at least before she's married. Sometimes Kohenet also means what? The Kohen's wife, even if she wasn't born into the Kohuna. And why is a Kohenet important? Because a Kohenet has certain dispensations that a Yisraeli doesn't. For example, most importantly, the Kohenet does what? She eats truma like the Kohen. Okay? So that is the thing. I can't eat. I never have a chance of eating truma. Okay, so Kohenet can't. So you would have said, because she's called Kohenet, which means basically it's just a female of Kohen, maybe she could serve in the temple. Komash Milan, she can't. Even though these non-Kohanim, that's the term we're going to use for Zar because there's no English equivalent, were warned. That Torah means that thou shalt not. They not involve themselves in the service of the sacrifices. They're only liable to death at the hands of heaven for something that's called a finality. Okay, there's certain things that are not considered final. Lo avodah sheyesh acharei avodah, something that's not final, but not something that's not final. Yeah, they're not allowed to do any of this. Just the death will only come if they did something that's final. So let's see the definitions. So only 4 of these services in the temple are considered final, so he'd be liable to death for them. Al hazrika, throwing the blood. Why? Once you throw the blood, that's it. There's nothing else you can do with the blood. Okay. Valak Torah, burning something. It means whether it's ketores or the what do you call it, the part of the mincha that he grabs the kmitza that he throws onto the fire, or even parts of sacrificial meat and limbs that he puts on the fire. There's nothing else to do with them afterwards. Or pouring the water, the libation of water on Sukkot. Nothing else to do with that water. You pour it, it's done. Tamid. Okay. And the regular libation of wine, which is every single day they have a korban. Certain korbanos come with wine. It's a daily occurrence. The tamid has its own nisuch yayin. So that's a finality. Every other service you can imagine, there's no death for that. So I guess the czar who catches the blood of the sacrifice, which is a main service the Kohen does, and then walks the blood to the altar, he will not be put to death by God for such a thing. It's a terrible sin, might even validate the service, but it's not a problem. Let's see this. Ketzados Rika. How does this work? Throwing the blood. By the way, sometimes the blood is netina, just placing the blood, or spilling the blood. They're all considered types of zrika, right? We'll see those also in their place. Bein shazarak bifnim, bein shazarak bechutz. Doesn't matter if he did it within or without. Where's blood put? There's an outer altar. The blood is applied to the outer altar. Prescription, which side of the altar, how high on the altar, that depends on the type of sacrifice. But also, some blood is sometimes put on the inner altar. That is the golden altar inside the Kodesh, which is normally used for Ketores, but there are certain sacrifices, Yom Kippur and public sin offerings, when the entire community does a sin based on the orders of the Sanhedrin. So blood is put on the altar, and also on Yom Kippur. What else is the Kohen sprinkling the blood? He's sprinkling the blood within the Holy of Holies, basically onto the floor, and he's also sprinkling onto the kapot, into the paroches, onto the curtain, right? So those are all acts of blood application. So blood can end up in 4 different places. It could just be one act of sprinkling, one act with the finger, okay, from all the acts of sprinkling. How many did they do? Achas, 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 right? Counting up to 8. Even some of the sprinklings of the mitzorah. The mitzorah gets sprinkled. They sprinkle the kohen on the mitzorah himself, right? They take the blood, they apply it to the mitzorah. Hareza chayav mita. So now he's liable to death at the hands of heaven. It was a czar who did it, and that's the last thing. The blood, once the blood is sprinkled or put in its place, nothing else. So he's chayav misa. Ketzad ala Torah. What about for burning something? Hiktire varim o komets o levana al mizbeach. He burned some limbs on the altar, or the komets. That's the part of the meal offering that's actually burned, or the frankincense. That's the spice that they bring with the every mincha has some levana put on top of it. The frankincense, and then he's supposed to scoop that up with some flour and burn that on the altar. Afilu hipech. You have the word hipech. How do you spell it there? You have hafach or hipech. So we have hipech here. Okay, and I just want to consider who does this. Yeah, we have hafach too. I don't know why. I guess hafach is regular pa'al, and Machon Mamre has hipech in the PL. Okay, bevarim shelo nit aklu v'kerev srifatan chayab mita. Let's say there's too many things on there. They're not burning well, so he flips them over, stokes the coals a little bit, moves things around so they burn. Anybody see what do you have when they burn chametz erev Pesach? Too many pieces of bread and too much pretzels on there. It's basically smothering the fire. You see that there are things that are just on top. They're not burning. What? Yeah, they wrap it in aluminum. The sacrifices were wrapped in aluminum. So sometimes, even though it was properly put onto the pyre, what they have to do is flip it over so it'll continue burning. Okay. And vushi akter kazayas. And of course, the threshold for the punishment is a kazayas worth of sacrificial whatever it was. Rambam says you do kmitza properly, you have no less than 2 zaysim in here. Okay, perhaps even 3 zaysim, because the zayis is really small, by the way. And it's a very easy threshold to cross. Also, whenever Chazal told us to eat something, it's just a zayis. It means it's so easy to do the mitzvah of matzah. There's no difficulty in it. You just have to take a bite of matzah. Less than a mouthful of matzah is a kazayis. It boggles the mind why anybody would even suggest that you have to fill your mouth with matzah and swallow it in one shot just to get a kazayis. Okay. Next. He burned incense on the inner altar, the golden altar inside the temple. Once he burned the kazayas, he's chayav. Let's say he took some of the special Torah for Yom Kippur. Where does he burn that? That's placed in the pan directly on the floor of the Holy of Holies. There's no altar in the Holy of Holies, right? So the Kohen puts it there. Because it says that the Kohen Gadol in this particular place takes melochofnav, his whole hands full of Ketores, that's an explicit shur in the Torah. So if a person were to offer that much Ketores in the Holy of Holies, he would be chayav. But if it's any less, just a kazayas like the other time, no punishment. You imagine there was who tried to do this? King, we mentioned him 2 weeks ago, King Uziyahu. That was his. That's what got him put into purgatory. He thought too highly of himself. He thought he was going to enter the temple and offer incense. Was he going to offer just on the golden altar, or going to the Holy of Holies to offer like Kohen Gadol? We don't know. The Kohen tried to stop him, and suddenly God intervened, made an earthquake. He became a Mitzorah. They ushered him out. He never came back. Learned his lesson. Well,
It's not the day that Yeshayahu.
yeah, the Medrash says that's the day Yeshayahu basically got his first revelation also. Okay. It says in the year that King Uzziyahu died, I saw God, and it's the sixth parak. It begins. So that was his initiation. So he's not when he died. It's when he became a Mitzorah, and a Mitzorah is like he's dead. Okay, that's the Medrash Chazal there. Next, person who takes two logs. It doesn't even have to be a log. It's basically two sticks. They didn't just have random pieces of wood for the mizbeach. We saw that there's even a roll. The blemish kohanim check the wood. The wood has to be nice and pileable. Okay, not too hard to manage. So these are gizrei etzim, means cut pieces of wood that are set for the pyre. So a person who does this, harehu kamaktir virim. That's like burning limbs of the korban. The misa. So he is liable to death. Etzim korbanheim. Wood are korban. The temple has sacrifice of animal, vegetable, and mineral, basically inorganic. What's mineral? What are the mineral sacrifices? Animal sacrifices, we know there's 5 types of animal. Vegetable sacrifices are wheat and barley, oil, and wine. And bikurim are brought, but they're not put on the altar. They're eaten by kohanim. Those are fruit. What else is there? What's inorganic korbanot? Salt is a mineral. Yes, you're supposed to put salt in this mizbeach. Every time you bring a korban, you have to put some salt. So that's the mineral component. And the rest of the inorganic that's not even mineral is water, because water is a sacrifice on sukkah. So everything is brought on the altar. So it doesn't really matter over here. Even one of the vegetable sacrifices is wood. So if I ask you what vegetables are offered on the temple, so it's oil, wheat, barley, wine, and wood, and frankincense. Okay, that's how it adds up. Frankincense is not a food. You can't eat the stuff. You know, it can maybe add a little bit to your food to give it a taste, but it's not like human food. Okay. Next. What are all these? These are all parts of making the meal offerings. Yotzekin is pour the oil onto the flour. Bolel is mix it together. Potate is, by the way, pita is another example. The shorish is patot ota pitin. Break the bread into small pieces. Okay, in modern Hebrew, some sort of small pasta-like substance called pititim, little pasta balls, right? Egg barleys. So the shorish is pei tuf tuf. That's why the word pita is as a dot in the tuf. It's pei tuf hey. That's the correct spelling, like the word pika. The shorish has 2 tufs, so it's not pisa. Okay, pas is a 2-letter word that comes from 3-letter shoresh. So that's another example. So that means he breaks apart the bread. There's some menachos that once they're baked, they have to be broken up into pieces. And moleach means he salts the korban. The menif, he waves the korban. A lot of korbanot, the kohen has to pick it up and do a ceremonial waving. The magish, what is a magish? Magish is someone who presents it. The official act of hagasha is bring it close to the altar. It says that they have to do this with menachos, basically. Okay, they have to bring it there. Why do they have to bring it there? Because when a person slaughters an animal, a person can slaughter an animal. The kohen has to catch the blood and then bring it there. There has to be an equivalent act done with the mincha. That is, you bring a meal offering to the temple, you don't get to walk it right over to the altar and hand it to the kohen. You have to give it to the kohen something before, and he has to walk to the altar. What does he do? He does what the kohen should do. He's the one who puts on the showbread onto the table, right? Or the 2 bazichin. Those are 2 cups of levona, the frankincense that was offered with the lechem hapanim. Or he sets up the candles of the menorah. You have matzit or meitzit? Matzit. Okay, fine. With the dot, because that's the right word. Lahatzit. Okay. A matzit is lighter in modern Hebrew. Okay. A meitzit, what's the shoresh? Sadi yud taf. Matzit is nun sadi taf. Okay, so the shorsh with them like mashiv has a nun. The dot means in this case that there's a nun missing from the beginning of the shorsh. Okay, what do you mean? Someone told me on I think my son was confused by this. He says Kohanim don't put fire on the mizbeach. The fire comes down from God. It is true that at certain points in history, God, to show his excitement that it had been done right, except the korban, he brought his own fire. It doesn't say explicitly regarding the second temple anywhere in Tanakh that this happened. It happened in the first temple. It happened in the Mishkan. It happened to Elijah. But does it say it happened in the second temple? There's a tradition it did, but it was like, instead of like a lion-like fire that consumed everything, it was like a dog. And it's not like a kelef. But the mitzvah is explicit in Sefer Vayikra right at the beginning that the Bnei Aaron have to put fire on the altar. They have to bring a torch and they set up the wood and they just put it on fire themselves. The Maccabees didn't have to wait for fire to come down from heaven. They brought fire.
Did they take the fire from the menorah?
Well, who lit the menorah? No, you didn't make fire. The kometz, okay, not the komets. Komets mil ale with no vav is the thing that the kometz, the person who takes the 3 fingers worth, takes from there. The makabel damim, or receives the blood. All these things are forbidden. Afal pisha pasal, and now it's the fellow who did this has invalidated the service. Varehu muzharo kol elu. He's been told not to do this. V'lokeh, and he should be lashed. Eno chayav mita. He is not chayav misa. Mipnei shekol achaf mehen avodah sheisha acharei avodah. Each one of these services has a subsequent service. They're not final. There's no finality. Vena gemar avodah. It's not the end of the service. Why? So moleach, there's still what to do is then put the whatever it is that has a salt has to be burned, and all these other things. There's still basic part has to be burned or whatever it is. Shchitat kodashim, the ritual slaughter of the sacrificial animals. That's technically mutter with no. This doesn't include malika, by the way. Okay, malika is what the kohen does to kill the bird. Okay, that's unique. That's not shchita. Keshera bazarim. So it is valid if done by non-Kohanim, and technically even women. Afilu kodshe kodashim, even the most holy sacrifices, sin offerings and burnt offerings. Bein kodshe yachid, bein kodshe tzibur, whether they're sacrifices of individuals or for the tzibur. The korban tamid in the morning could be slaughtered by a regular Jew. Shneimar v'shachareth ben abakar l'fnei Hashem. They shall slaughter the cow, the son of the cow. It means the young bull in front of God. The Krivu Bnei Aaron, and then Bnei Aaron shall bring it forward. It means that it starts after the slaughter. That's when Bnei Aaron they begin their job. Mikabala ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna. Quote from Chazal: from receiving the blood and onward, that is the mitzvah of the priesthood. V'chein I have sheit v'anituach v'lachad etzim lemizbeach. So too with skinning the korban. Every korban has to be skinned. V'anituach, cut into pieces to be offered on the altar. V'lachad etzim lemizbeach. Or walking the wood to the altar, that can be done. Keshera bazarim. Let a regular Jew do it. I guess they would honor some Jew if they really wanted to. Let him bring the wood to the altar and to hand to a kohen. Okay. Shneimar be'varim. It says with regards to the limbs of these animals, v'ikriva kohen adakol hamizbecha. The kohen has to bring all the limbs. Zo alachat evarim lakevesh. This is the limbs. He brings them to the ramp of the altar. Holachat evarim yishetzricha kuna. Bring the limbs requires priesthood. And bringing the wood does not need kuna. Thank God we got right to the last halacha. This is fitting for Hanukkah, and that is because we're not having shir next week. So too, lighting the menorah is valid if done by non-Kohanim. Really? How do they get into they're not even supposed to go into the Kodesh. How do they even get in there? Well, we just said all these other cases. Yeah, if he went to the Kodesh, he did incense. He shouldn't be there. What if he did? No. It says kshera. There has to be a way to do it, according to Rambam. Lefikach, ime tiva kohen wrote. First, the Kohen sets up the candles. Votzion lachutz. Then he brings out the candles, that is the menorah, outside to the temple courtyard. Mutar lazar ladlikon. And then the Kohen, then the Zar lights it, and then they bring it back into the temple already blaring, which, by the way, is the exact opposite of the halach regarding the Hanukkah candles, which we light in the menorah nowadays. Chazal didn't recognize menorah; they meant candles, like a set of candles. So nowadays, the whole halachos mitzvah, hanachos mitzvah, you first have to set the candle where it's supposed to be and then light it. You can't light your Hanukkah candles, whatever they be it a menorah or whatever it is, and then place it where it's supposed to be. It has to be placed and then light it. And the Rambam holds the exact opposite. This is the Gemara there with the menorah of the temple. There's an actual menorah. It could be moved when lit. That's at least the Rambam's opinion. Do we hold like the Rambam? Is this unanimous halacha? The Gemara says this. This is one of the biggest surprises. The Machon HaMikdash, like people like this, they even have an illustration. What it would look like shows a regular Israelite, not in uniform, lighting the menorah in the temple courtyard next to the altar. Because the Kohanim did it for them. Did they ever do this? Saying ever done? It's a technical thing. The Ravid disagrees with the Rambam. Read what you don't have the Ravid. I'll read you what the Ravid says. Amar Avraham. Hifli kishamar mutar lazar lalikan. He went too far when he said it's mutar, permissible for a non-Kohen to light them. He permitted? No, he said kshera. But he's basically permitting it. Ella she'im hidlikan ksherot. If a zar lit them, it's fine. Lichatchila, it shouldn't be done. Okay, Machlokas, Rambam, and Ravid, would they ever do such a thing? We don't know, but it's technically speaking, it's not a service. What does it say? When you go up to the thing, but it doesn't mean that the Kohanim actually have to light it. It doesn't even hit haneros. Doesn't say about our. So when you go up to the neros, okay, it's a good question. And they say that the Kohen specifically goes up on this stool. Okay, basically 2 stairs, a stool to go up there. What about the chatzitza problem? The Kohen has to be standing directly on the floor of the temple. He's doing this. The answer is standing on the stool isn't the problem because hadlaka is not an avoda. If hadlaka is not an avoda, then it can be done by a zar. And by the way, you can walk around the temple. Even though we're not supposed to wear your shoes in the temple, regular Jews could be wearing socks, for example, in the temple. That's fine. Clean socks, and that would be a chatzitza. If a Kohen was wearing socks, Kohen can't wear socks, we saw. But a regular Jew can wear socks in the temple, and that's why you could light the menorah. So thank you all. Send in your questions and comments. God bless us. This coming Hanukkah, we see the lighting of the menorah once again. Yeah, they should do this. Just like in those days and in these times, they were able to light the menorah. So too, we should be able to do that. Be well, everybody. Have a happy holiday and stay safe.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.